Okay. Okay, so we are going to learn a mimer that is connected with Rabbi Yisrael Aryeh Leib's yard site, the Rebbe's brother. Um, it's the Hakdama to the mimer has a little bit of the basics of his life, so we're gonna read the Pesach Dover also. So the Kras Shabbos Parshas Acharei Kedoshim Yud Gimel here. This is a Kedoshim Tihyu chof aleph. It's printed in Sefer HaMaamarim Melukat Hey. The Kras Shabbos Parshas Acharei Kedoshim Yud Gimel here. Yom HaYard Tzad Shel HaPasuk V'Chassid Eisuk Tzar Tzibur Afal Mechulu Yisrael Aryeh Leib. So as we come towards the day of Yud Gimel Iyar, which is the yard site of the Chassid and the one who is Eisuk and Tzar Tzibur Afalim, many actions that we saw Aryeh Leib. So let's look in the double star. Neilad Gimel Sivan with a question mark. He was born around Gimel Sivan Tafresh Samach Tes, the Ir Nikolaev. Leningrad. He spent a certain amount of time in Leningrad. Das heißt, at the time when the Friedrich Rebbe was there, I think that's around Tafresh Pei Gimel, I think. His Chabiv Moed al Kliktus Admor Maratz, the Friedrich Rebbe, he became very beloved to the Friedrich Rebbe. Say he would show him great closeness. And the Yeshimus of the Rebbe, there's actually an unbelievable story that the Rebbe writes that the Friedrich Rebbe told the Rebbe that he saw in his sleep, he saw the Rebbe Rashab came to the Friedrich Rebbe, and Rebbe Yisrael Aryeh Leib was there also. And the Rebbe Rashab told the Friedrich Rebbe and Rebbe Yisrael Aryeh Leib a mimer. And the Rebbe asks the Friedrich Rebbe asks the Rebbe to ask Rebbe Yisrael Aryeh Leib if he remembers the mimer. It's a very interesting story. First of all, we see the Inyanim that Rebbe Yisrael Aryeh Leib was shaykhs to. Second one, I believe that the Friedrich Rebbe asked to ask him if he remembers the mimer. In other words, there was no doubt by the Friedrich Rebbe that the Rebbe Yisrael Aryeh Leib heard the mimer from the Rebbe Rashab after the Stalkus of the Rebbe Rashab. His only question was, is he at the level where he was also able to remember it afterwards? So Shahayu Chassidim was very beloved on the Chassidim. Say they would verbring with him when we snack him. They would debate with him matters of halacha and matters of Chassidus. Various questions would be brought to his attention for him to resolve them. Sai in Nigla and Sai in Nister. The Shnas Tofresh Tzadik, which would be 1930 about. Azav Bris HaMeitzes. He left Rosh B'Sashev Beirapa Berlin. He lived 1930, either 1929 or 1930, depends when in Tafresh. Is that the way it goes, or is it 1930 or 1931? It's fine, either way. I think it's 1929 or 1930, where he lived in Berlin. And afterwards, he made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, where he got married. In his last year, Liverpool, Anglia, he lived in Liverpool in England. Niftar b'dmei Yamav. Yeah. Niftar b'dmei Yamav b'yamid Gimel Ir Tafshin Yud Beis. He passed away young in Yud Gimel on the day of Yud Gimel Ir Tafshin Yud Beis. While people cautious, and by the request of the Rebbe, he was brought to Eretz Yisrael for burial in the Chaser Kavod Bir HaKedesh Tzvas Tibana B'Sekena. Yeah. There's letters. There's letters about that the Rebbe sent to his wife, I believe. So that's a very brief biographical sketch of Rabbi Yisrael Aryeh Leib. Okay, let's get to the Maimer. It's from the Pesach Dover. So the Rebbe was Magia the Pesach Dover. If the Rebbe wrote it or made changes to it, we don't know, but the Rebbe looked at it. Every Pesach Dover, the Rebbe used to put the date for the Maimer. They would prepare a Maimer without saying the date, like what the Maimer is officially being published for, and the Rebbe would put the date and go over the Pesach Dover. Okay. So this is also an interesting mimer in the sense that it says right at the top of Baker Lifnei Atfila Bechade. This is a mimer that the Rebbe said not in shul. He said it in the morning before davening in his room. I'm not familiar with the story of when it was, but it was obviously something very specific, very special to the day. Okay. Disclaimer up front: I didn't learn the mimer even once. The only thing that I know about this mimer is I usually don't do that, but that's the way it worked out. That's the way it worked out this time, so you'll bear with me as we work our way. It's going to be more Chabrusa style. There's just one thing that I did notice about the Maimon, that David speaks about the Mila of Tzadikim. So it's a Maimon, when David talks about the Mila of Malik Chuvas, so that's a Maimon that I feel, okay, I could take something out of it. But,
He mentions both at the end.
The Alter wrote Sefer Shel that's the Tanya, and he also wrote the Sefer Shel Tzadikim, but he burnt the manuscript, so since I never saw the manuscript of the Alter Rebbe Sefer Shel Tzaddikim, I'm not a tzaddik unless you have access to it. Perhaps you're a tzaddik. But either way, we're going to learn about the mile of tzaddikim.
You learn it to know what you're not.
There's two reasons to learn it. First of all, you learn Chassidus for the Haskalah of Chassidus. It's not just for Aved. Sefer Shel, no, he decided to not publish it and he burnt it.
He didn't want to reveal it to the world.
He didn't want to reveal to the world. Many of the Alter Rebbe's Talmidim were tzaddikim. Rabbi Isaac Hamler was a tzaddik. Rabbi Isaac Hamler, Zalman Zezmer. I mean, many of them. The Frierdiker Rebbe applies the title tzaddik to them.
What about the
Sefer that got burnt that Frierdiker Rebbe later asked?
The
Alter
Razon.
Rebbe later asked, Mom, right?
Oh, the Maggid was it? This is what there's a
Looked
few.
at the Sefer and he said, "Where's your?"
That's the Tzemach Tzedek. Where's your? The Tzemach Tzedek gave some ksavim to somebody for safekeeping. There's many things. Let's go. The Alter Rebbe wrote a pirush on Chumash in which he combined the pirushim of Rashi, the Even Ezer, and do you know the other one? The Ramban, I think. And then he had a dream 3 days in a row, 3 nights in a row. He had a dream where he's sitting in shul and learning, and 3 older Yidden walk in and they call him to a dinteira, and they claim that they're the Ramban, Rashi, and the Even Ezer, and they're coming with kindness to Alter Rebbe. That now that he wrote this sefer, none of them are ever going to look in his sefer. In their Sfarim, they're just gonna learn from the Alter Rebbe sefer. So after 3 days, nights in a row having the stream, the Alter Rebbe burnt it. And then there's also the Razor. When he passed away, he burnt a lot of his memories, his stories that he wrote down that the Rebbe Rashab wanted, and the Frierdiker Rebbe really treasured. The Frierdiker Rebbe, looked through them a few times. He burnt those. There's a lot of things that were burnt by the Rebbeim for one reason or another. And then there's the things that were burnt because of fires. Okay. That's yeah. The Strashela was a tzaddik. A lot of his students were tzaddikim. Okay, let's get started with the
It's
Maimer.
not only tzaddikim, by the way. It's also a lot of shiva.
It's also
Sounds a lot about shiva. Say.
by the Alter Rebbe.
You're saying this part. You're saying the
Oh, it's also. Oh, you're saying it's
about
also.
Shiva, yeah.
It talks about Bali Tshuva, but
Yeah, it's all about
I didn't learn the
It's all about
Maimer.
shiva, it's all about-
It's all about Tshuva.
At the end.
Okay,
Yeah.
Baruch Hashem, the Maimer is all about Tshuva. It's just at the end. It's just at the end that he explains the Mile of Tzaddikim. Okay, very good. Thank you for sending us that easy. But either way, you have to learn the Haskalah of Chassidus even if it has nothing to do with Aveda. The Haskalah of Chassidus is in on its own. Okay, it says in the pasuk, "David kol adas bnei Yisrael Kedoshim Tihyu ki Kadosh Ani." The pasuk says that the Eibishter tells Moshe Rabbeinu to tell the Yidden that you shall be holy. Why shall you be holy? Ki Kadosh Ani, because I am holy. The Isa Medrash Yachol Kameini. The Medrash asks a question from this pasuk. We compare the Kedusha of the Yidden to the Kedusha of the Eibishter. So one might get the idea that we can achieve the same level of holiness as the Eibishter himself. So the Medrash says, Talmud Leimer Ki Kadosh Ani. That's why the pasuk adds the words Ki Kadosh Ani, that I am holy Kedushasi L'mayla Kedushaschem. Whatever level of holiness a Yid may reach, you should know that it's not the same level of holiness as the Eibishter. So that's a question and answer in the Medrash. What's the problem with the question? So the Rebbe asks, who in his right mind would think for a moment even that I can be as holy as the Eibishter? Right? The Medrash says that this question that you would have thought from learning this pasuk, that one can reach the level of holiness of the Eibishter, l'chura, who would even think such a thing? How can we even approach the level of holiness of the Eibishter? L'chura yeshleimas, the Rebbe says perhaps we can explain this that why would one think that he can? From the words of the pasuk that it says that you shall be holy. Why? Because I am holy. Kedoshim Tihyu. The reason, the fact that the Eibishter is holy is the reason and the explanation for this, that the Yidden should be holy. So mashma from this you might get the idea that the holiness that a Yid has to attain has to be at the same, or has to be at least similar to the holiness of the Eibishter. And that's why the Medrash has to explain that the pasuk does not mean that. How is this possible that we can reach the same level of holiness as the Eibishter? Since it says Yisrael the Eibishter and the Yidden are all one, therefore Yidden are capable of all of the inyanim that are l'mayla, including the holiness of the Eibishter. Of course, we don't mean to say the Eibishter himself being the Eibishter. We mean to say the sin of kedusha that's l'mayla by the Eibishter. Okay. But according to this, we have to understand the other side of the equation, the conclusion of the Medrash, which the Medrash says that the holiness of the Eibishter is above and higher than the holiness of the Yid. And how does that fit the simple understanding of the pasuk that the Yid has to be holy in a similar way to the way the Eibishter is? Because the reason that he's holy is because the Eibishter is holy. Ki kadeshani. The Alter Rebbe explains in that which holiness is the pasuk referring to that the Yidden have to reach. This is the Kedusha that is drawn down by the work of the Yidden. In other words, there's a level of holiness that's drawn down to this world when a Yid does a mitzvah. And then there's a second level of holiness, the holiness of the Eibishter, which is higher than the holiness of the Yidden, is a higher level of holiness. That level of Kedusha, none of our actions can reach that level of Kedusha, and therefore we can't draw it down. This level of Kedusha is drawn down dafka through the Aveda of Tshuva. As Kobe said, this moment we'll talk about Tshuva. Okay, so what do we have over here? We have the Esrusat Lasata, we have the Aveda of the Yid. The Aveda of the Yid, when he does mitzvahs, draws down Kedusha, draws holiness down into this world, and that's one level of holiness. But no matter how high a Yid can reach, since he is a person, a human being, a creation, even his neshama is a creation, so there's a limit, there's an upper limit to how high his actions can reach and can from which they can draw down holiness. So that's one level of Kedusha. Then there's the Kedusha of the Eibishter. That's a holiness that comes from above. This level of Kedusha is already higher than the level of Kedusha that a Yid can reach. Nevertheless, this level of Kedusha can be drawn down by the Aveda of Tshuva. When a Yid does the regular Aveda of Teinah Mitzvahs, he does what the Eibishter wants him to do properly, so he draws down Kedusha into this world. But there's a higher level of Kedusha that a Yid can draw down to this world, which is when he didn't do what the Eibishter wants, at that point, no Kedusha is drawn down. But then later he does Tshuva. So by him doing Tshuva, he actually does draw down the higher level of Kedusha. The Tzarich Bir. How does this add up? You're contradicting yourself. Tshuva is also the work of a human being down here in this world. Why do we title it the holiness of the Eibishter? Right? If it's a level of holiness that's drawn down by Tshuva is an Aveda that a Yid does. A Yid is the one who does Tshuva. So l'chora, this is the level of holiness of the Yid. Why then do we call it the holiness of the Eibishter? Yeah? Makes sense, the question? Makes sense. Okay, simple question. All right. So we say, there's a pasuk in the brachas that the Eibishter tells the Yidden. The Eibishter says, that the Yid will be only high. In other words, he will be at high levels. He won't have any negative things, any lowly things. And the Medrash says over there as well, Yachal Kamoini, you would have thought that the Yid can reach the same level of the Eibishter's greatness. And the Medrash says over there as well, my greatness, the Eibishter's greatness, is higher than the greatness of the Yid. Okay. According to the explanation of the Alter Rebbe that we just learned in the first us, that that the Yidden also have the ability to draw down the higher level of holiness. This level of holiness that we call the Eibishter's holiness. It's just that in order to draw down this higher level of holiness, the Yid has to do a higher level of Aveda, which is Aveda mitzvahs, the work of Tshuva, the service of Tshuva, which is higher than the standard service of Torah and mitzvahs. So we have to say that the same thing applies to the two levels of greatness. That a Yid can also draw down the higher level of greatness, but in order to draw down the higher level of greatness, he has to do a higher type of Aveda. Okay, trying to make a drop of a Seder in the Maimer so far. What do we have in the Maimer so far? The Rebbe describes a system where there's a Yid down here in this world, and he serves the Eibishter. And by him serving the Eibishter in this world, he draws holiness down into this world. The question is, what level of holiness can a Yid draw down into this world? So we say that there's two levels of holiness. There's Kedoshim Tihyu, the level of holiness that is on the level of the Yid, and this level of holiness he draws down through the Aveda of Torah and Mitzvahs. And then there's the Kedusha Sik, Kadesh Ani, the level of holiness of the Eibishter, and that level of holiness the Yid draws down also through his Aveda, but through a higher type of Aveda. What's the higher type of Aveda? The Aveda of Tshuva. So there's two ways that a Yid can serve the Eibishter. One way is through the Aveda of doing what you're supposed to do, right? Living a life of holiness and doing the things that you're supposed to do. And another type of Aveda is that if a Yid, Chas v'Shalom, finds himself in a situation where he's not supposed to be, at a level where he's not supposed to be, some things in his past were things that weren't so great, but then he does tshuva. So when the Yid does tshuva, that's even higher than the service of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. It's even higher. And when a Yid does this higher Aveda, then he draws down the higher level of holiness. Because it's a higher level of Aveda, he draws down the higher level of holiness. So the Rebbe is pointed out a difficulty in how that works. Maybe we should leave it for later in the Maimer. We'll see if the Rebbe explains it more in this Maimer. What does it mean? The way the Rebbe termed the question is that if the Yid draws it down, then why are we calling it the holiness of the Eibishter? So it's not exactly what you were referencing, but it's in the same neighborhood. If it's higher than him, how does he draw it down, right? So the Rebbe puts it differently. If it's his Aveda, then in what way is it higher than him? So that's the question, okay? And the Rebbe says the same idea also applies to this thing that's called greatness. The Medrash says the same word, that there's Vayisar Aklamaila, that there's the Eibishter's greatness, and there's the Yid's greatness. And the Medrash says the same word. You would have thought that a Yid can reach the same level of greatness as the Eibishter. Says the Medrash, no, my greatness, the Eibishter says that his greatness is higher than our greatness. And the Yid can't reach that level. So the Rebbe says that it seems that, or the Rebbe says, Tzarich Lema, that it must be that the Yid can draw down the regular level of greatness through one Aveda. And the higher level of greatness that we say is higher than the Yid, he can also draw it down, but for that he has to do a higher type of an Aveda. Okay? Let's see if the Rebbe goes specific. Let's see what the Rebbe explains to us. So we have two systems, we have two things that are drawn down, holiness and greatness. So the Rebbe says that holiness is higher than greatness. The Gedula, hu inyan haispashtus v'hagilui. When we say greatness, we are referencing hispashtus and gilui. Let's just read a few more lines, and then we'll get back to try to explain it somewhat. But greatness is hispashtus, is when something extends and reveals itself. This is the reason why chesed is called gedula, because chesed never stays by itself in its own place. Chesed is all about giving. It always goes somewhere else to bring itself to there. We'll get back to it in a moment. Even according to the explanation, okay, we won't get into this bracket. Okay, so there's another level of hispashtus, and that's called gedula, and that's higher than chesed. But in any event, gedula is the idea of hispashtus and gilui. And then kedusha, miloshin kedusha v'havdala, that it's separate from you. That's already the etzem, and the etzem is apart, is separate from any idea of hispashtus and gilui, of extending. What are we talking about? What's the etzem? And what's hispashtus and gilui? If we could bring some aces to try and explain it, we'd be much better off. Yeah, Kobe, you want to give it a go or not?
It says in the notes, like the sun versus the rays.
Oh, which note is this?
Or note 10. Note 10.
Note 10. What's that? Tahirahi. Right? It has something to do with that in the sense that there's the essence of the neshama, and that never comes down into this world. That remains in its place. And then there's the hispashtus and the gili of the neshama, I don't know if it's called Hispashtus and Gilui in Chassidus, but it would make sense that it's called Hispashtus and Gilui of the neshama, and that lowers itself down to this world. We could try to work with that mashal, but it's talking about neshamas. So even though we all know that we have a neshama, we sense that we have a neshama, and the neshama is our true being, but exactly what a neshama is, you still can't tell me. You know what the neshama does, and you know that it's there. This is explained. It's described in Chassidus. This phenomena that we all know that we have a soul. We all feel the actions, the effect of the soul. We feel it being active. But what is the soul? I couldn't answer you. Yeah. Okay. Alter Rebbe discussed this in Chassidus with Rav Moshe Valenker, but now's not the time for that. Okay. Let's see Ha'ara 10. This Ha'ara 10 is on which words? Who are etzem. Okay. So he says like this. V'chein ha'moir ha'gadol al shem gedulas haziv v'ha'oir ha'mispashtus. I'm not sure this Ha'ara is talking about. The L'chura HaKavanah. The gedula koy loirak al hispashtus b'pel oira l'gam al ha'moir shemiyonu mispashtus. V'zeh moving to Kedusha b'ha'etzem sh'lamay l'gam ha'moir shemuv l'minu hispashtus. So it looks like it's going to help us, but then he takes it even higher. Let's.
You get it? The Gedula C is saying like it's implying it's the more, and Kedusha is beyond even the more.
Yeah. So this I have to understand that I don't know, but let's talk about the using the sun and the hispashtus of the sun. Taka could serve as L'chura as a good muscle to understand this idea of etzem and hispashtus, at least at a beginning level. Okay, so at a beginning level, where do we have something that you have the essence of the thing? Then you have the way the thing extends up. So the sun serves as a good example for that. Okay? You have the essence of the sun, which is the material of the sun, which is in the sky, millions and millions of miles away, hundreds of millions. If anybody knows, feel free to tell us exactly the distance of the sun at any given time. What is it?
93 million.
It's like 93 million miles away from us. Okay? It's not here, basically. Okay, that should make it clear to us that the etzem of the sun, the essence of the sun, is not here. Then you have the light of the sun and the heat of the sun that comes, and that is here. Now, is it the sun or is it not the sun? So, how are you going to try to term it, right? So, in Chassidus, this is called a hispashtus and a gilui. What do we mean to say? You can't say that it's not the sun. Huh? So is it something separate that the sun? In other words, is it ever separate from the sun? It's never separate from the sun. Could you ever have kaneh? Could you ever have this gili of the sun without the sun? No. So it is the sun, but on the other hand, it's not the sun. The sun we just determined is 93 million miles away, so it's definitely not the sun. So it's something that leaves the sun. It definitely comes from the sun, and it's a part of the sun. But it left the sun. It's mispashet and it's miskala. It leaves its own habitat, its natural habitat, it leaves its own place, and it comes somewhere else. Now, any time that you have something that leaves its place, it's always on a lower level than it is when it's within its place. For example, over here, yeah, it's very. Maybe we should close another window. It's going to get higher.
It goes away the next 2 minutes. It goes away. That's it.
The highest sound was exactly when you said that. Yeah.
A little in between. Okay.
The flow idea is what is it saying in the flow?
Hang on a second. Hang on. So we have the same idea with a person. Now we're not going to get into the etzem of a person. We're going to speak in relative terms. You have the person the way he's with himself, right? A healthy person has this distinction of his own being and his own world where he exists, and then you have the way he relates and communicates to others, including the way he expresses his ideas to others. Now, whatever the person expresses to others is always on a lower level than the way he experiences them within himself. If it's an emotion, the intensity and the full beauty and color of the emotion is always expressed much more than it can be within himself, right? Because when it's mispashet and miskala, it's not the thing itself at all. What were you saying about the flow?
Like what are we? I don't know. What are we saying about like the difference between kedusha and gedula?
So we're getting there now. To bring it back to what he said in the Smimer, he says like this: you have the idea of Gedula, of greatness, and then you have the idea of Kedusha, of holiness, of separation. What do each one describe? Gedula, greatness, describes something that extends itself to somewhere else. It leaves its own essence and it shows itself, it reveals itself in a different realm, in a different place. And this is the idea of Gili, of revelation. Okay? Now that's always going to be lower than the essence of the thing. Okay? Kedusha, on the other hand, what does Kedusha mean? Kedusha means something that's separate and beyond us. Why is it separate and beyond us? Because it's the essence of the thing. And the essence of the thing always remains in its own place at a level that's above and beyond being connected and being related to anything else. If in the place of the etzem it has some sort of a relationship to another place, then it doesn't really have its own true existence. This is things that require longer explanation, but like I said, I didn't prepare. So perhaps we'll leave it at that. If it's necessary for the hemshech of the Maimer, then I'll ask, or I'll try to find where we have a good explanation of this idea of etzem and his pashtus. We'll see how important it is to have a good wrap on that idea for the continuation of the Maimer.
But what's the contradiction?
It's not a contradiction. No, it's not a contradiction. It's just saying there's two things. We said that there's holiness, Kedusha, and there's greatness. And the Medrash spoke about both. And the Medrash said that a Yid can reach the higher level of holiness through the Aveda of Tshuva. The Rebbe also said that a Yid can reach the higher level of greatness through some higher Aveda, perhaps also referring to the Aveda of Tshuva. I'm not sure the Rebbe didn't explicitly say it. Okay? So the Rebbe is noting now that which amongst these two, the Gedula of the Eibishter or the Kedusha of the Eibishter, which one is referring to a higher level? In both cases, there are levels that are beyond us. But in these levels that are beyond us, which one is higher? The Gedula of the Eibishter or the Kedusha of the Eibishter?
Gedula is being touched up as something that's used for the word chesed.
Yes, which means his pashtus, which means something that left its own place. And therefore, the Rebbe concludes that Gedula is a lower level than Kedusha. So even though both of them are beyond our levels as people, but the Gedula of the Kedusha of the Eibishter is even higher or far beyond the level of Gedula of the Eibishter. Okay, clear.
Just to clarify one more point of this, that we're saying that in the analogy you mentioned that the sun and the ray of the sun, that might imply that the sun is like the essence and the ray is the but saying that. Even though the sun is like the essence in that case, it's the luminary, but that still has a relationship to its postures. So because the sun has a relationship to its postures, it's also included within Gedula. Even though we said Gedula has its postures,
Correct.
It's not only its postures.
That's what he says in Article
Anything
10.
with that has an idea. So the Kedusha, even the lower level of Kedusha, even the lowest level of Kedusha is the essence that's beyond even the highest level of Gedula.
Yes, that's in Article 10.
In general.
Or in general, but for purposes of this Maimon, for purposes of the Mashal, we're going to leave that out, and we're going to leave the Shemesh as the Etzem, because otherwise you lose you lose any understanding that you had. It serves well as an explanation of Etzem and his pashtus, at least within the context of this Maimon. So according to this, we could say, no. We're on the second line from the top of the page. According to this, we can say, drawing down the level of Gedula, which is even higher than the level of the Gedula of a Yid, that is done through the Aveda of Tzadikim. But in the Aveda of Tzadikim itself, you need a higher type of Aveda in order to draw down the level of Gedula. And this, then we need to have the Aveda of Tshuva specifically, that is in order to draw down the level of Kedusha. Okay, let's try to make a Seder now again. You have the Aveda of Torah and Mitzvahs, and you have the Aveda of Tshuva. Okay? One Aveda is lower, one Aveda is higher. The Aveda of Torah and Mitzvahs is lower, the Aveda of Tshuva is higher. Okay? Then you have four different levels. You have the level of Gedula, right? There are two levels. two ideas, two concepts, two beginners, but with two levels within each one of them. The beginner of Gedula and the beginner of Kedusha. Okay, so you have Gedula, and within Gedula you have two levels. You have Gedula Schem, the Gedula of the Yidden, and you have Gedula Si, the Gedula of the Eibishter. And then within Kedusha, you have Kedusha Aschem, the Kedusha of the Yidden, and you have Kedusha Si, the Kedusha of the Eibishter. Okay? In both cases, to reach the lower level of each Bechina, you do one type of Aveda. To reach the higher level of the Bechina, you have to do a higher level of Aveda. Right? So it's a consistent system. Okay? So to reach the lower level of Gedula, you do one type of Aveda. To reach the higher level of Gedula, you have to do a higher type of Aveda. Same thing with Kedusha. To reach the lower level of Kedusha, you do one type of Aveda. To reach the higher level of Kedusha, you have to do a higher type of Aveda. Okay? But since in general, Gedula is lower than Kedusha, so even the higher level that you do by Gedula is still lower than the higher level of Aveda that you do by Kedusha. Okay, so they're kind of staggered if you want to envision it that way, incorrectly. But either way. So, what are these levels of Aveda? So he says like this. To reach the level of Gedula Si, you have to have the Aveda of Tzaddikim. Okay? But within the Aveda of Tzaddikim, he says this is a higher level of Aveda than the standard level of Aveda of Tzaddikim. And with Pashtus, I would assume that he's adding that in the brackets because the Aveda of Torah and Mitzvahs, you could say, you could understand it to mean the regular Aveda of Tzaddikim. A Tzaddik does Torah and Mitzvahs. So therefore he says that no, we're not referring to the Torah and Mitzvahs that we mentioned earlier in the Maimer, that reaches the lower level of the Kedusha of the Eibishter. Over here we're actually talking about a higher Aveda in the Tzaddikim, that reaches the level of the Kedusha of the Eibishter. Okay? So in a Tzaddik's Aveda there's a lower level and a higher level. The higher level of the Aveda of a Tzaddik reaches the Gedula, the greatness of the Eibishter. And it draws it down to here. Then you have by a Yid, the higher level of Aveda by a Baal Tshuva. I meant to say, the higher level of Aveda by Baal Tshuva, that draws down the level of the Kedusha of the Eibishter. Okay? Clear? Let's summarize it one more time. The higher level of Aveda that a Tzaddik does. This is the Aveda of a Tzaddik, and this is the Aveda of a Baal Tshuva, two different Avedas. The higher level of Aveda of a Tzaddik, that draws down the greatness of the Eibishter. The other type of Aveda, the Aveda of Tshuva, of the Baal Tshuva, so the higher level over there draws down something even greater. It draws down the level of the Kedusha of the Eibishter, the holiness of the Eibishter. Okay? Higher than the one of the Tzaddik, because Kedusha is higher than Gedula. It's in line. He doesn't mention that over here, but it's in line with that. It's in line with that. Yeah. Perhaps he's going to get to it later in the Maimer. I don't know. Yeah, because Kedusha is higher than Gedula. So the higher level of Kedusha is higher than the higher level of Gedula. And the Baal Tshuva is Dafka, the one who draws down this higher level of Kedusha. Okay. That's the system, that's the framework, if you wish. And now the Rebbe goes into over Yesh Levayrze. Now perhaps we can try to understand something. Okay. Let's see if we can understand something. Yesh Levayrze, Alpi Masakasu, it says in the Pasuk, V'yoswan Alpi B'havaya Simcha, that Yeni Adam B'Kedosh Yisrael Yagilu, that the humble ones will have in addition, will have more and more joy, simcha, happiness in the Eibishter, and the pauper, the impoverished people will rejoice in the Holy One of the Yidden, in Kedosh Yisrael. Evan is a poor person. Yeah, in English you call him a pauper. When you want the word for a poor person is a pauper, as far as I know.
I heard it before.
Yeah, it's a poor person. If there's a difference between saying a poor person or a pauper, I don't know. You'll ask somebody who knows English. Okay. So the pasuk speaks about two people over here. That's a Lashon Kodesh. In English, Rashi actually brings it, but I don't know if in English. I'm talking about in English. I don't know if in English you have that exactness in the language.
Poor and pauper.
And pauper, yeah. I don't know. Or just the same thing, and that's what you call a poor person. Basically.
He's real open to reading every area.
Yeah, okay.
It became a little hot.
Okay.
Super hot now. Super hot.
That's good. Apparently,
One day we'll get the
I
air
am
conditioning
the one
going. Sunday.
with the sides. It's like the remote, you know?
There's some cheap air conditioners that you can get. Cheaper. Maybe
No, it's just
one day. One day.
The
Okay.
season has begun.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's see. The pasuk refers to two people. One person he calls, or two categories of people, anovim, the humble ones, and the other category of people he calls them Evyeni Adam, the paupers. And then he says that each one of them is going to get something. One of them is
Evian is usually touched up as a destitute, which means a hot garnish, no house, no nothing, like a homeless person in the gutter. That's an Evian. Because Reb once by Purim, he once told in the 50s, he told Rabbi Groner and someone else, he says, go down to the Bowery. Over there, you're going to see the real Evian. He says, and they went there, they came out Tzedakah. The Rebbe made a filthy.
yeah, for sure. And like I said, it's in Rashi. So how do you say a destitute person, basically? But either way,
Homeless, a grown had
the person in the Bowery, the Evyeni Adam, we're going to touch as the person in the Bowery. Okay. So what do we have now? We have, like I said, the Anovim and the Evyonim, and then we have that one of them is going to have additional happiness in Havaya, and then the other one is going to rejoice in Kedosh Yisrael. Okay. The first part of the pasuk, which says Yosfa Novim Bavaya Simcha, that's a reference to the Aveda of Tzadikim. Through their humility and their bittul of the tzaddikim, they add joy to Shem Havaya, in Shem Havaya. And by them doing that, so they draw down the revelation of Shem Havaya down here in this world. That's the first part of the pasuk. The V'yeinei Adam hem Bali Tshuva. The V'yeinei Adam, those are the repentant ones, the Bali Tshuva. The Torah mitzvahs nikraim b'shem Adam. Torah mitzvahs is called Adam, but l'chein nikraim Bali Tshuva b'shem V'yeinei Adam. Why are they poor? Came V'yeinei b'chinas Adam the Torah mitzvahs. They are poor in matters of Torah mitzvahs, and that is what a person is. A person is called Adam because of his Torah and mitzvahs, and he's poor in this. Shehem Agim b'chinas Kedosh Yisrael, and the V'yeinei Adam, the Balei Tshuva, they reach the level of Kedosh Yisrael. Shekadosh who moved them b'chinas Yisrael de'leila l'mayla mehavai. How does he touch Kedosh Yisrael? That which is even holier than the level of Yisrael de'leila, the level of Yisrael in the upper realms. In other words, not the Yidden, but it's referring to a level of holiness l'mayla. In other words, they are higher even than Shem Havaya. So over here we see in Lukatei Torah this idea that you have two Avedas. You have the Aved of the Balei Tshuva and you have the Aved of the Tzaddik. The Aved of the Balei Tshuva reaches where? That reaches in Shem Havaya. It causes an addition to Shem Havaya in the Simcha in Shem Havaya, and it draws Shem Havaya down here to this world. Then you have the Aved of the V'yeinei Adam, of the paupers, of the destitute, and that does what? That already draws down something from Kedosh Yisrael, from this level which is higher than Shem Havaya. So over here we see in Lukatei Torah this idea that Balei Tshuva reach higher than Tzaddikim through their Aveda. They reach even higher than Shem Havaya, which is where the Tzaddikim reach. Now the Rebbe is connecting what we said earlier in the Maimer, that the Aveda of the Tzaddikim draws down this level of Gdulasi, the greatness of the Eibishter. That is the same level of the Tzaddikim described in Lukatei Torah that they bring about in addition to this level of Shem Havaya. They bring additional joy, and through this they bring an additional revelation and the drawing down of Shem Havaya. So that's at the level of Gdulasi, and that's where the Aved of the Tzaddikim reaches. Shah Gedula is mashtas the Havaya, Kameshu Mitzad Atzmoi, He Gedula Hashayaches, Lelamis V'Nivraim, Gdulaschem, Elashish Gvul, Vais Mashtas, Vagilu Shaloi. Let's read one or two more lines, then we'll get back to it. In Biyosfu, Gamer Bavaya, Hushnim Shechs, by Hagdula Dainans of Shalom, Ilam Shachs, Lelamis Gdulasi, Valdezamites of Gamba is Mashtas, Vagilu the Havaya. So there's two components. There's the component of the level itself, and there's the component of how much it's revealed. We say that the tzaddik adds simcha to Shem Havaya. That would be the level itself, Shem Havaya. And then we say that through this, the tzaddik brings down an additional revelation of Shem Havaya down into this world. So that's an addition to how much it's revealed down here. Okay, there's two components. You follow? Yeah. We bring about a greatness in the level itself, and through that we bring about an additional revelation of that level. And over here in these two lines, the Rebbe explained why that makes sense and how that works. So he says like this: there's the Gedula of Shem Havaya K'mei Mitzad Atzma. There's the greatness of Shem Havaya as it is on its own innate, level, innate level. And this greatness of the Eibishter is at a level where it's shaykh to the worlds and to creations. Okay, so in Shem Havaya there's many levels. The Shem Havaya L'Sata, Shem Havaya L'Eila, then the Shem Havaya Shabbatzmus. There's many levels of Shem Havaya. So he's saying over here is like this. The Shem Havaya in its own level, what he's calling over here is the Shem Havaya that's shaykhis to elements. It has some connection to elements. We see it in the taich of Shem Havaya that it's mahavet. It creates worlds. Okay, so it has a relation to this world. Now such a type of a revelation, since it comes from where? From a level that has a shaykhis to this world, so it obviously is also limited. Because anything that has a connection to this world being a world of boundaries and limitations, so anything that is relative to this level, that has any relationship to this concept of boundaries and limitations, its revelation will also be limited. Okay? What does the tzaddik do? He brings a higher level in Shem Havaya. What's this higher level of Shem Havaya? Shem Havaya, what does he call it over here? The Gedul of Ein Sof Shalamayla Mishaychus Leilumis. The greatness of the Ein Sof, which is higher than having a Shaychus to Eilumis. And he brings that to Shem Havaya. And now the Hispashtus, the revelation of Shem Havaya, has no limit also.
Is the bow?
Does that make sense?
Is the Shem Havaya?
Not really. Hang on. Let's
Shem Havaya. Gedil is beyond Shem Havaya.
Hang on one second. Let's just explain before we discuss it. What he's saying is like this. You have Shem Havaya on its own level. Shem Havaya on its level where it stands on its own has a connection to this world, has some relation to this world. It's expressed by the fact that we call it Shem Havaya al Shem Mahava, that it's the creator of this world, so it has some kind of connection to this world. Okay? Now, what do we say about that? We say that the revelation that comes from there is limited. Why is the revelation that comes from there limited? Because it's connected to this world. It's related to this world, even though in the most distant way. But it has some concept of the limitations of this world, and therefore its revelation is limited also. A limited thing, its revelation will be limited, right? To put it in simple terms. Something which is limited, something which isn't infinite, how much revelation can it bring about? Only a limited amount of revelation. Does that make natural sense? Yeah. Okay. What do we say over here? We say that the tzaddik does what? He draws a higher level into Shem Havaya. What's this higher level that he brings to Shem Havaya? The level of Ein Sof, the level of the infinite light of the Eibishter. Now that in Shem Havaya we're talking about the infinite level of Shem Havaya, of Ein Sof. So since we're talking about a level that is infinite, so its revelation is also infinite. Its revelation also goes without any end. And therefore, there's a new hamshacha lamata. Therefore, we say that its revelation down here is also greater.
But the first level of Havaya you spoke about, which you say is limited.
It's not limited.
It's not, but it's still a Haya Haya but
that's a different.
The infinite is still there.
It's a different level.
It's a different level. The Taich and Shem Havaya could be referring to something else. So we're not going to. It doesn't belong here.
No, but I'm saying is that the point being of those three words is that there's infinity lying in there.
But that's a different concept.
There's different meanings.
It's a different level in Havaya. It's not shaykhus there at all.
One level is Mahava, which is lower. One level is High Hodeh, which is higher.
I'm saying is that level which you're bringing down, which is a lower level,
right?
Its source is it's a true. It's a lower level of Havaya, but its source lies in the Etzem Shem Havaya.
I don't know if the terms etzem shem havaya, but what you're saying is correct, but in a different way.
No.
Shem havaya, even as it is shem havaya, never mahava.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to Haya Havaya Ke'echad, which is the higher level of Shem Havaya, which he's not talking about. You don't have to go there. Shem Havaya is absolutely not limited. Even at the level of where we say it's Havaya because of Mahava, we're not saying that Shem Havaya is limited. He's far beyond limitation.
He's still Hakol Yochel.
Still a Kol Yah, he created the illness, of course. That level is still at the level where it could create illness. But what we're saying is that it still has some limitation to it. Its revelation still can't continue forever. Why? Because even though it itself is not limited, but it allows for limitation. Since it allows for limitation, so the concept of limitation is something that at least exists to it. So therefore, ultimately, there'll be an end to how far it can go. Only something to which limitation absolutely does not exist. Only that thing can we say can truly reach without an end all the way down. Now, to distinguish between something that we say is actually limited versus something that has a shaykhis to limitation, it's way beyond the scope of this thing and way beyond the scope of what I can describe properly. There's many mamonim that help to understand that, but it's not for now. It's not for here, and it would take beyond what I can give right now. We'd have to be a different mimer. Okay.
One day.
Sorry, Kobe. Now that we finished discussing it, let's get back to what you were saying before.
Well, I mean, what Gedula C, we say, the first part we say the tzaddikim are accessing Havaya. Now we're saying, oh, they're not really accessing Havaya, they're accessing something beyond Havaya and bringing it into what's going on here.
I observed that as well. I'm not clear on it.
Just saying,
I'm not
maybe
clear.
it's the level of Havaya that we mentioned. Maybe he doesn't say it.
He does not say it. So
Maybe.
I'd rather stick closer to.
Or in Sof Shalamayla Mehav. It doesn't say Shalamayla Mehavaya.
It doesn't say that either. Right?
It just says Shalamayla Meshayches La'olamos,
Correct.
which could also be a higher level of Havaya, but we don't know for sure if it is or
Correct.
not.
But since we're safest to say to touch it just the way he writes it, that he is Megala, he's Mamshich to Shem Havaya, the Ein and Sof Shalamayla Meshayches La'olamos. So now this same Shem Havaya that we had before, we were Mamshich into it.
So
The
it's
Ein
not-
Sof Shalamayla Me'olamos.
which is not it. Which is not it itself.
Not. That's the system of Hamshacha. But that's what he says. That's what he says.
It could be a higher level of Havaya. Doesn't say. It doesn't say it is.
I would
it could be.
I would say not.
The first
Because
part-
if he wanted to say that, he would have said.
Because he did say it in the first part. Because he said that only the Bali Tshuva reach higher than Havaya, but the Tzaddikim are still in Havaya. And that's the first part still applies in the last part. Even though the last part isn't explaining
But in
the first part.
but in the first part, he never said the higher level of Shem Havaya. He
No,
never went there.
But it's implying all levels of Havaya. Nimshach Gilei Di Havaya. So, Hemosifim Simcha. Okay, you're right. Sha'adeh Hanav B'Dol Shem. Hemosifim Simcha B'Shem Havaya. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the only place where I see support to say that this is the lower level of Shem Havaya is because we say that it's shaykhis to Elumis and Nevrayim. And
Right.
before of that, you can only
His
say on the
pastures.
lower level of Shem Havaya.
Hagedula has pashtus to Havaya.
Because that's
Kmo shehu
Gedula
b'tzarach.
shaykhis to Elumis and
Right.
Nevrayim.
His
But
pashtus.
it could be that that's a mistake also.
It says
Could be
his
his-
pashtus di Shem Havaya, meaning his pashtus di Havaya,
It could-
implying the other one is still di Havaya, but not this pashtus.
It could be that it was a mistake to understand over here that he's talking about the lower level of Shem Havaya. I inferred that from the
No,
fact that he says that this
Gedula
Gedula is
count.
shaykhis to Elumis and Nevrayim.
He also says his pashtus. I mean, his pashtus di Shem Havaya, implying the other part is still di Shem, is still of Shem Havaya, but it's not
But
his
he
pashtus.
doesn't say anywhere that he's talking about the lower level of Shem Havaya, the higher Shem Havaya. He doesn't talk to that
But he
at all.
does say his pashtus versus whatever that other thing is.
Fine. It's not the same as saying a lower level of Shem Havaya or a higher level.
Right.
I inferred that. Perhaps it's correct. Perhaps it isn't. I don't know. Okay, let's finish this. The Hamshach is where David is tzaddikim anov, and this Hamshach of drawing down Gedula C into Shem Havaya, which is the Gedula of the Ein itself, which is higher than Shaykhis Ta'elim, is who does that Aveda? How is that Aveda done? It's done through the Aveda of Tzaddikim. Anovim, who are termed the humble ones. The Inyan Vev Yene Adam B'Kedosh Yisrael Yagilu. And then the second part of the pasuk, which is the idea that the destitute of man will rejoice in the holy of Israel. That's how we term the Eivishter, the Holy One of the Yidden. So who Hamshachas Bechinas Kedushas Yishalomayim Kedushas Chem Alidei Hatshove. That's already drawing down the Bechin of Kedushasi, which is higher than Kedushas Chem, and that gets drawn down only through Tshuva. Now it's obvious over here that we're talking about something that's even beyond the Ein Sof, which is Shaykh's Teilemis. If
Interesting.
we said that the tzaddik draws down the level of Gedula of Ein Sof, which is higher than Shaykh's Teilemis, so Kedushasi, which is higher than that, must be that it draws down higher than that. But he doesn't say exactly what he means, and probably that's what he's going to explain further, because the next starts with Yuvan Zeh.
Right.
So probably he explains further what's this thing that is higher than the level of Ein Sof, which is higher than Shaykh's Teilemis, that the tzaddikim draw down, that we say, no, the Bali Tshuva draw down Kedushasi, which is even higher than that. So for that, we'll have to see Vayter in the mind.
And we also totally skipped Kedushaschem. We don't know what that is. Is that beyond Gedulasi? Or is that part of beyond Kedushaschem?
Yeah,
We
so,
can't skip that entirely.
If I had to guess, I would say that it's staggered, that Gedulasi is higher than Kedushaschem. That's
Interesting.
but that's
Interesting.
without any support from the inside of the Maimer, just the way
It sounds like
the way
it.
it
It does
fits
sound
into
like
me.
it. It definitely sounds like it. Even though it does say that Kadosh in general is beyond any level